Good evening, witches.
Hi, witches.
Welcome to week 2 of the Beginner Witch series, where tonight we're going to talk about
We're talking about types of witches, the labels, and also getting into choosing your own witch ethics. We'll see you in just a minute.
So glad to have all of you with us here tonight for week 2 of the Beginner Witch series.
Yes, this is very exciting because there were 120 people signed up for it, which means, not all 120 people will show up, but that's okay. It means that there's 120 interested parties. So I always love to see those numbers, that the topics that we're trying to bring for you guys are relevant and that people are interested in them. So I said so. We made a vow tonight to not say so as many times, because we kind of said it a lot last week. Anywho,
and you can't edit all those so's out.
I'm not editing all that. No, it is what it is.
Okay,
but
let's
tonight,
get started.
Tonight we are talking about the types of witches, and I never taught this before because this is a rather new thing to kind of define ourselves or separate and make classifications. Really, what it used to be was like, you're a witch, which just means you're a solitary witch. So then that word came out, the Solitary Witches Journal. You're Wiccan, you follow a group of people who already created the guidelines and the structure and the books and whatever, and that's been around a long time. Or you were a pagan, which means a number of things, like you were just following things associated with old practices, wherever you got them from, like the Norse traditions and all of that. So now we have a plethora of these labels for different types of witches. And on one hand, you guys, it's super interesting because you can find books related to a topic that you think you match well with. Like for green witchcraft, which became a really big thing, like maybe 6 or 7 years ago, the herbology of it, right? So really using plants and understanding them. And it wasn't just for spells, it leaned into the healing side of it and making teas that are also spells and really bringing it full circle. And then Kitchen Witch came about, where it's like, well, and I do this in food now, so I take it to another level. And it's just been beautiful to kind of watch it all blossom and let people find their own little niche inside of witchcraft that they like to practice. But the problem that once we label something, when you're talking to people, is when that label might come up, unless you just think of it for yourself, then this will never matter. But if you're talking to somebody and you say, well, I'm a green witch, and they're like, I'm a green witch too, but you guys could be completely opposite in your beliefs or how you practice. So there really isn't a set outline of, if you're a green witch, these 5 things are true for you. If you're a traditional witch, these 5 things are true for you. So that's what you'll run across, and where people find the most confusion, because you're trying to find your place, you're trying to find your path, because that's what this really is when you choose a label, you're sort of choosing a path to try out. And then later comes the ethics with it. So I believe first we are talking about the types, but know that this leads into the ethics of what you believe. And that's what you'll, through the path of witchcraft or walking as a witch, you'll choose something that interests you in that topic and research it a little bit, and then learn what other witches who do that practice. But I do want you guys to know that you can call yourself any kind of witch that you want to. You can be a rainbow witch, a bedroom witch, a garden witch, dog witch, cat witch, dry wood witch. I don't know.
I never heard of a bedroom witch. I sort of like, that conjures up all kinds of things in my mind.
Okay, so right before we got on the call, I saw my reflection. I was like, I look like a sexy librarian. It kind of threw me a little bit with my glasses on tonight. And my mom goes, that was my look. You're stealing it.
So my look when I was her age was sexy librarian, and it was just like that, only blonde hair. So yeah.
Well, I guess that's why I said bedroom witch. That's what I was kind of going to. But so we want you to understand that while labels can be really helpful, they can also be really misunderstood, and it instantly brings in confusion and communication. Especially when you get into talking about, do people still use the term a black witch, which usually means black magic, white witch, which means only positivity, love, and light, gray witch, which means everything in between. And then you've got things that people think are witchcraft, but the religion themselves don't agree with it. And it could get into a whole big thing. So voodoo and hoodoo, and where do they fit in, and the different subcultures even that go with that. So it's a big area for what can be called a witch and who practices witchcraft. So as you guys look into it, you're going to hear like 10 or something tonight, but it's a label that people created and you can create one for yourself. I think that's my most important thing. Like, no label is exactly right. It just needs to be right for you. And if you don't want to label at all and you just say I'm a witch or I'm, spiritual, then you just use that and you don't have to explain anything. But for tonight, there was reflection questions, huh? I think we should go over the types first.
Yeah, I was going to do that.
Yeah. Okay.
But the one thing I wanted to say about the labels, I wanted to make sure that we got this message across, is that when we give ourselves labels, we create a divide and a connection.
Yeah.
So if we just say we're broadly witches, then we all sort of fit together in one group, right? But if you start narrowing it down to I'm a green witch, I'm a kitchen witch, then you're getting into, like Jamie said, a niche area. And then maybe you're like, oh, I only want to associate with kitchen witches because that's my thing. I cook. So
it can stop learning from each other.
Yeah.
Like if you don't think you're the same.
And it can be hard. Maybe it can be hard to find other witches who are kitchen witches. So I don't know that the labels are fine, I guess, if you want to have them and know in your own mind that your area of practice is centered around something to do with the kitchen and food and things like that, or a green witch and you're really into plants. Those
combination.
Those things are all fine in your own mind, but I'm not sure if it's really helpful to go out at a witch convention and say, hi, I'm Pam and I'm a green witch or I'm a kitchen witch, because then you're like, kitchen witches over on aisle 5. And anyway, so that's how the labels can end up, sort of isolating us from the rest of the big witch community.
I don't want to say harm us, but
not harm, but sort of just put you into categories. It's like if you put all the blondes in one room and the brunettes in another room and the redheads in another room.
We can't be friends because you're blonde.
Something like that. Okay, so that's how labels can be helpful and hurtful. That was the point that I wanted to make of that. And then I think before we talk about the journaling prompts for homework, I'm going to go over just about, I don't know, half a dozen or so types of witches defined that I think you will hear
loosely defined,
but that you may hear as you start down this. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Okay, so there's a Wiccan. And a Wiccan is very specific to the Wiccan religion, and the Wiccans follow a religion. Wiccan is a recognized religion since 1986 in the United States, something like that. And so there's, just like any religion, there's a doctrine, there's belief systems, hierarchy that you follow. So if that is, if you like a lot of structure, and you like people to tell you, you want structure because you want guidelines. Yeah. Wiccan could be a path that you want to explore.
With saying that, you can be Wiccan in a coven if you find one, and if you like all of that goes into it, but you can also practice being a Wiccan by yourself, where you're following books that are written by Wiccans who kind of try to help you along that path. So know that you can be a Wiccan without being initiated into a coven because you claim it for yourself. Again, the labels are for you, you claim them, and nobody needs to hand it down to you and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the only thing I would say about Wiccan for myself personally is there are a lot of things that the Wiccans do that I like. So that I incorporate into my practice. So because some of those things are, I believe them. Yeah. So that's Wiccan. That's an organized religion with structure, hierarchy, and all that. Okay. Mm-hmm. Then we have solitary, which is practicing with guidelines, ethics, beliefs, and practices that you create yourself, and you could practice with other witches or can practice with other witches. Then we have a hedge witch, which they're into plants and herbs and gardening and nature and meditation. And a key aspect of a hedge witch is isolation. And why is that?
So the hedge is what used to surround the towns. So when you hear the word hedge witch, they lived on the outskirts of towns. They were the women that were back in the woods, and people only saw them when they really needed help with medicine or pregnancies or something like that. So
it's crazy because when I don't know about you guys, but when I heard hedge witch, I actually thought of an actual hedge and that it was green, and that it had to do with plants. So when I thought
Makes
of hedge,
sense.
when I thought of hedge, that's what I thought of. It must do with plants. But I understand that the hedge was the edge of the town. And so now that explanation makes a
Yes.
lot of sense.
So
Okay.
it's easier than saying the witch that lives outside of town. It's just the head witch.
The witch on the edge of town
Yeah.
or outside of town. Okay, then we have a traditional witch, which typically follows ceremonial, more guided and European practices.
And
do you
that,
wanna-
well, no, I just want you guys to know that that can vary depending on who you read from. So again, these are only things until you meet the people who actually practice these things and claim the label. But from one witch to another, the way that they practice and how they think and do stuff, it's going to be totally different. So for some people, traditional witches are the same as hereditary witches. And I'm like, oh, okay, I could see that. Again, that's why labels can be really misleading and cause confusion. But so open heart, open mind when you talk to people about what they associate with. And usually you grow with it. I should mention that. You could start out on one path and say like, oh, I'm going to study green witch stuff. But then you might evolve into a a divination witch, which I love. That I was like, oh, that's so cute. Like people who use just tarot and runes and stuff. So yeah,
Okay,
it can change.
so
as well.
then we have a green witch, which I thought was really like close to the hedge witch, but they have a lot of, they do plants and herbs and living in balance with nature. That's where their
Heavily
vibe
nature
is.
focused.
They're like heavily nature focused. Then, of course, the kitchen witch, which we all should know what that is because you're in the kitchen with food and you're making spells with food and you're doing things with food.
Yeah, you're like
and
imbibing magic into the food that you're making. So
and
whether you're
specifically, I
chanting-
think adding also spices that are correspondent to something that you're
Yes.
trying to do. If you're trying to make a romantic dinner for your boyfriend, and
Mhm.
you want to put in that love potion number 9 or whatever it is.
It reminds me of how there's things around food where what is it, oysters that they say are an aphrodisiac?
Yeah, an aphrodisiac. Yeah, oysters.
Don't know if that's true. Don't know. I rarely eat oysters, but I don't know if that's also associated with in witchcraft. Would an oyster also have that for a spell? Like I should look that up. I just thought of that now.
Could.
Don't know.
Okay, so the next 3 are sort of, I think they're probably, to me anyway, they're the newest, if you will, the newest of the ones, because I think these solitary hedge, traditional, but this is a very new term, chaos witch. And I'm going to let you describe what a chaos witch means, because I think the term chaos is confusing, but Jamie's going to do a really good job of explaining to you exactly what chaos witch means.
Yes. Okay, the basis of the chaos witch practice, and there is a girl on YouTube if you ever want to know more about it, because this is where I get my information, because she is a practicing chaos witch, and there's books. But a chaos witch means that every single time you want to do magic or anything, you are like eclectic, where you just pull it from wherever, right? Like knowledge anywhere, try some stuff, and you just believe like whatever you believe. And in order to go from being eclectic, which means that you pull in things from all over the place and use them, but you'll use them again. So like this herb will always have the same meaning for you. This oil will always have the same meaning for you.
You might reuse a spell.
Yeah, you'll reuse a spell. You'll reuse like a ritual, a ceremony, whatever it is. For a chaos witch, the whole purpose for them is to never do anything the same ever.
Twice.
Yeah. So like they don't ever repeat anything. It needs to be just pure like, I have all this stuff right here. We're throwing it together and boom, that's it. That's done. They're not looking up references for stuff. They're not trying to remember what things mean or if somebody else wrote that. And I totally get it. They go with like, it's intuitive witchcraft more so, and they don't write anything down. That's another big point. They don't really they might keep a book of shadows for journaling about what's happened, but they wouldn't really keep a grimoire because that would be the reference books that tells them what things mean. And they don't care. It's not important to them. That's not where their magic comes from. So that's what a chaos witch is when you hear that.
Okay. Another term that you may or may not have ever heard is a Christian witch,
Why is that so weird for you?
which sounds like an oxymoron. Like, how can you be anything related to God or connected with God and religion and also
Religious
be a witch?
God. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but there are witches who who follow a religion, a Christian religion. One of the many, I think there's many of them that can be considered Christian religions.
Yes.
That they combine Christian religion with witchcraft practices, like prayers and altars, candles, rituals, and spells.
Yeah, and
Now-
theirs would be, their god or goddess or the Trinity on their altar would be
The Father, Son, and the Holy
that.
Ghost.
I was gonna get it. You didn't give me enough time. So they might have,
I was
the
raised
Virgin
Catholic,
Mary
sorry.
and,
Yeah.
a statue of Jesus or the crucifix or something. So they would use things from Christianity in their witchcraft practice, because witchcraft can be practiced by anybody. Magic itself can be practiced by anybody. So I kind of use witchcraft and magic interchangeably there, but the spiritual part of it, or the path that you lead on where you're growing and who you believe your power is from, or where you draw your power from, like within yourself, your origin story. That's sort of what changes the magic on where you believe you're pulling it from and pulling it into and all of that. So Christian witches, yes, I have met two, and they're very nice. There was nothing different. I was like, okay, it's something I had to wrap my head around. I was like, so when you do a spell, you're like, thank you, Jesus, for the gifts, or I don't know how I didn't ask her that because it sounded silly, but yes, that was basically it. She's like, she used the word pray instead of like
Manifest,
meditate, it's Jesus, and that's 100% fine. He's still an archetype. It's not like I don't believe in him. He's just not somebody that I devote any time to. I just
the story, the whole story. And then we have eclectic witch, which an eclectic witch borrows a little practice from everywhere, and they build their own unique practice.
Yes. So basically, any eclectic witches that you meet, it's going to be very, very rare that they have the same, like all the same things. Remember, there's not going to be any sheet that they're all like, oh, we check these 5 boxes. You will find people with things in common because they're probably still using herbs or candles or colors or the elements. They may or may not celebrate the 8 holidays that technically the Wiccan religion put out. So it's a pulling from wherever they feel like it from. But difference between them and chaos is they'll use their stuff again. So that is more of what I am. That's probably more of what you are.
I think so too. Yeah. Cause I pick what I like, and then I do that.
And leave the
and I
rest.
do that thing, and then I
Mhm.
leave it. So,
Yeah.
but basically I'm just a witch, a woman in total control of herself. So then the very last thing, and the last time that we did this, the last session that we had when we mentioned these, I think we had some feedback about black, white, gray, voodoo, dark, all those kind of practices that
Yes.
are in the realm of practicing magic to hurt other people, baneful magic, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual harm. And we're not saying that if you're one of these, that's what you do, because maybe you don't.
And we don't know enough.
We don't know enough about it, but what we do know is that we know a little bit about enough to be dangerous, I guess.
Yeah.
You're sort of connotating from the name of it, Black Witch. Well, what does that conjure up in your mind when you say Black Witch? That's dark. Okay. That to me, that's dark. And then we all know, just because we've probably seen like American Horror Story season, whatever, with
2 or 3
with what was the name of that one when they were in New Orleans? The Coven. Yeah, the Coven. So we all know about, Marie, what's her name?
Marie Laveau.
Marie Laveau. So we know this voodoo history that
Yeah.
New Orleans has associated with it. And that shit was real 200 years ago. Whether it's still real today, I don't know, because we don't know anybody like that. But anyway, these are simply terms that the reason that we're sharing this with you and giving you a little bit of definition for each one is because these are things that you might hear or read about as you explore and research on your own path. Keep in mind that these are all labels that are created by other people, and you can choose to either use them or make up your own term. For me, I'm just a witch. I used to define it, but it doesn't matter to me.
You realize that once you pick a path, you're like, oh, well, nobody even asked me what I am for like the last 2
you're
years.
just like,
I'm
listen,
not sure what matters.
Really, all you have to do is like announce witch at the grocery store, and that's it. You're on, it's on like.
Yeah, and then
you're getting a whole lot of conversation going right there.
Next question. Promise you, almost every time. So do you work with the devil? Don't even believe in the devil.
Well, I think the next question is, you do hexes or spells? Like, are you going to put a spell on me or some shit like that?
In the early days, it was always
crazy
like,
nonsense like that.
Yeah.
which makes it, I also think makes it a little bit of a challenge for new witches to put out there that, hey, I'm a witch, right? To say those words to people is scary. I know Jamie,
Yes.
I think Jamie finally came to the point where she's just like, she's she's out of the broom closet now. And
But
she
like
doesn't,
in regular public. So in regular public though, that's different. I can be out to people that I meet and we're friends for like, we've met up a couple times. I can be like, hey, so, you know, I practice blah, 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 whatever, because I feel safe. But now strangers will compliment me on something. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a witch. And they're like, what? I want to know everything, please. Like, let's connect. So that's been kind of cool to just be like, yep, I'm a witch. And there it goes. I took my husband to the medieval fair last year. And we're in, it was
I remember this.
slightly embarrassing. But we're in one of the, you know, the little shops and they've got all kinds of witchy looking stuff. And he walks over to the lady, and mind you, he's had quite a bit of mead at this point. He walks over to the lady and he was like, so you're a witch? She's like, I do practice witchcraft. He's like, my wife's a real witch. I was like, you don't, what does that even mean, honey? Why'd you say that? Like, he downgraded her so fast and he didn't understand what he did. I had to, you know, give him a little lesson in what that looks like, feels like, and that it's just not right. I'm like, you don't have to, don't tell people. I didn't give you permission to just walk up to people and be like, here's my wife, she's a witch. I'm like, I choose who I say that to when you feel safe.
So I saw a comment about, I'm sad that we can't boast about it like Christians do. I want to come back to that later on. I want to explore that a little bit because I agree with you. I feel like anyway, for myself, I feel like I need to be careful, and I actually encourage any new witches to be careful and how they, you know, fly their witch flag, because it can be, because it, you know, people are, they have some, what they know about witches. If you look up the definition of a witch
on like Wikipedia, you guys.
No, in the Merriam-Webster dictionary of 2023, it will tell you that a woman, it's typically a woman who does spells to curse people, to control things, or something really like archaic. It's archaic. It's like 400 years ago what they believed. And like, you haven't updated that yet. It's so disappointing. So I do caution and get concerned for new witches who are super excited and want to tell the world about who they are and what they've discovered. I just want you to be safe is all, because you just don't know how people are going to react. And we live in a very polarized society at this point in time. And yeah, so anyway, I wanted to touch on that for a minute, but okay. So those are the types of witches. So right now we're going to give you some journal prompts for you. Okay.
So last week the homework was to get a journal, and now you're going to write in it. And Kat's going to speak slowly. She has a habit of.
Was I talking too fast?
No. I just want to make sure that for the questions you go a little slower.
Okay. So here are your journaling prompts. And these are things, of course, the questions that you'll write about or ask yourself, whatever fits with you and you want to journal on. So how important is it to you personally to label yourself as a type of witch? Is that important to you? You know, so explore that. If it is, then why? And if it's not, then maybe, okay, maybe you don't need to explore it because you're like, yeah, I'm good with the witch. So, all right. So how important is it to label yourself as a type of witch? That's one prompt. And so I guess that's the only prompt. So unless you're pursuing teaching that method, or you only want to attract, so that was
those
one.
kind of people.
Sorry. I'm sorry. That was like one question. That was your one question. And here's a little bit of more information for you. Unless you're pursuing teaching that method. So let's say it's a kitchen witch and you only want to be a kitchen witch and you only want to associate with kitchen witches, then unless you're pursuing or teaching that method and you only want to attract those types of people to you, to your inner circle, it may not be helpful to label yourself as a particular type of witch. Just sort of broadly, I'm a witch, and then you can connect with people, because I bet if you're in the kitchen a lot and you're doing spells with food and you're using herbs and things to enhance, and you're doing all of those things that kitchen witches do, that you'll find other witches who do that too, but don't call themselves kitchen witch, because it's just part of their practice. They've adopted. Jamie,
Yes.
I know Jamie and I do the same thing with stirring our coffee in the morning with intention and saying something,
I
you
put
know.
cinnamon in mine.
Yeah, we put cinnamon in it
good.
and then stir it in the right direction, in the clockwise.
If you want to make something happen, clockwise. If you
Clockwise.
want to undo something or remove something, counterclockwise.
So that's kitchen witch stuff, right? But we don't call ourselves kitchen witches. That's just part of our
Little
practice.
tricks that we know
Yeah. So, okay. So that was your one journaling prompt. So
for
far.
now.
Okay. All right. So we have a note here. Do you
Oh.
still want to do this?
No.
Okay.
We're gonna open this question up at the end, because normally we wouldn't have talked for 25 minutes already, but we're gonna ask you guys if there's any other types of witches that you've heard about that you want to know about, but we are going to save that for the Q&A, which should be happening in about 10 minutes. 15
Well, also,
minutes,
if
where
we
open the floor up.
don't get to all the questions, we're going to do a live on Thursday night and cover any questions that we got here.
Yes.
Including the ones that we didn't get to answer, didn't get to answer fully, or thought of something else that we might
Yes.
want to add. But as a follow-up to this meeting on Thursday nights, we're doing a live where we're talking about the questions that came up. So please put any questions that you have in the chat. We would love to explore those. Even if it's not tonight, you'll see them on a YouTube live, and we'll get to them later.
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
So your next homework assignment is to research types of witches and find 3 to 5 that resonate with you. So research types of witches and find 3 or 5 that resonate with you, and just write down what they do. And then
What part resonates?
yeah,
with
what
you,
part
you know?
resonates with you. And
What
I
do you
think
like about that?
I think what you end up doing at that point is sort of building, like, these are the things that, these are the things that I'm drawn to on this path that I want to, like. So you're basically building your own path here, right? And you're going to pick from the things that you learn and research and here,
Here.
learn here, and sort of build this, like, your practice.
Yes.
So that's where you're going.
That's where our structure comes from, is we're going to give you the tools and the questions and some definitions to have you go for the next week now, research your stuff a little bit and start picking out things that you're like, yes, I feel connected with this. And as you do your research, you guys hold your questions, hang on to them. And when you come back next week, ask them again, or on the Thursday live. That's why we're doing a second one during the week, because we do have a lot of questions. Bring your questions and we will answer them for you. So as you research and you get questions, you have live witches who can answer them now. Like, that's so awesome. I wish I had me a long time ago. I had small references on the internet, books, and some very strange people that I met along my journey.
Listen, when she started, the internet was, when you did a search, it was like all those links, like the whole page, that hideous, pre-Google. Imagine if any of you were around then. I was. And it was awful. So I'm going to let you do choosing your path. You
Okay.
take that. So now we're going to talk about choosing your path. And I think that was the lead into that when I said as you explore these different types of witches and what parts of the practice resonates with you, you're picking,
you're formulating a path.
Formulating.
You're
There you
formulating
go.
Your
Formulating
path.
your path. You're formulating what your practice is going to be.
And the reason why this is important is because this is the part where it starts to feel really heavy for new witches. And that's what this whole series was built upon, was making the barrier to becoming the witch that you want to be less scary, less intimidating, less overload. And it starts with just finding what you're attracted to, going down that path a little bit, seeing what fits, seeing if you're like, oh, well, this isn't anything like I thought it was. Backing out of it, trying another one, but along the way, you're just learning all these things. And that's why we start with the Book of Shadows. So you can start recording your journey, put down websites that you found super helpful so that you can find them again, references, people that you might follow, just things that are really helpful for you. That's such a great thing in your first Book of Shadows or your grimoire, is just those helpful references. And then as you start to formulate what you like or don't like about certain paths, you're forming what your road looks like, on what rituals you might do, spells, what you believe in. Do stones and herbs have magical powers for you? Or is it more like it's just you embody that? All of those things get brought up as you research types of witches. So in choosing your path, probably the first decision that you would make is, do I want to follow a religion, which that's Wicca, or do I want to be a non-religious witch? Because I was going to say, well, and I guess
we use the term general witchery.
I mean, it's without the label, right? It's just like, I practice witchcraft, and that means a lot of different things. So unless somebody asks you for a detailed explanation, you can just be okay with the fact that you're on a witchcraft path, you're on your journey. So the label isn't everything, but it is probably like, do you want structure and Wiccan programs because they're out there, or do you want to just continue on researching stuff and finding your own way? The other thing that we already mentioned is, just because you don't choose Wiccan things, don't be afraid to look into all the Wiccan books. There's a lot of really helpful information out there that, again, like an eclectic, you can just take what you like and you're like, I'm going to do that practice. I love to celebrate the 8 holidays, and I wouldn't have that if the Wiccan religion wasn't around. You know, I would only know that there's seasonal changes and I wouldn't have names for them. So it makes it really convenient to have 8 holidays, almost perfectly 6 weeks apart from each other, and know exactly what's happening in the earth and why we celebrate that time of year.
Well, some people think that the rule of 3, you know, what the rule of 3 is like a general witchcraft thing, but it's not. It's actually a Wiccan. It's part of the Wiccan read.
Yeah.
So there are things that you will hear and you might think, oh, all witches, but that's not true. So that's another good reason, I think, to expose yourself to the Wiccan belief system. Because then you get that, you know, you understand that, again, because Wiccan is a religion, they're following a doctrine. There's a hierarchy, there's the whole thing to it. So, okay.
And it's not that it's bad. It's just,
no, it's not that it's bad.
Yeah. So if you choose to be Wiccan, but you're not in a coven, realize that you can practice any way that you want to. You do not have to find a certain order or district that you're under, because now there are a lot of them. And they don't even really keep good records of this. So I think
we don't know. We can't, if you're looking for a coven, we don't have any. I don't know. We don't know.
Well, no, I know of one. Just the ones that I
know of one and would not recommend it.
No.
So.
10 out of 10, don't recommend. When we were in Salem a couple years ago, we got to sit in on, because we went there for Halloween, and they threw, you know, like an invite. Hey, anybody wants to come to this, you know, thing? It was the Coven of New Orleans, and we were like, yeah, let's go see what other witches do. Like, so this is a real coven, like a practicing. Of course, I'm going to go in.
No, this was a known, like the guy that was running this is well known.
That was the ball. Yeah.
Oh, that was
that was one of the witches of Salem. He throws a ball and has a book, and he's very also different. I don't want to talk bad about him, but Salem's crazy. If you guys haven't been, there's a lot of witch fights up there, and I was like, wow, this doesn't remind me of like what witches should do at all. They literally like fight with each other a lot. So with that, I forgot where I was going.
You were saying about the coven. You were saying
you can practice Wiccan and not join a coven. So I just want to make that all very clear, because some people think that they need a coven in order to become a Wiccan, and you don't. You just follow the practices. Nobody needs to ordain you or invite you in or make you worthy of these things.
Or do a year in a day kind of nonsense. And
they have books that people wrote. So if you wanted to do a year in a day by yourself, that's basically the entry point into a coven. Is they invite you in, you send a little pledge. Then they tell you have a year and a day. They are basically trying you out while you try them out. And so they put you through, not really like tests, but how dedicated are you? Are you there when we call, you know, the coven comes first, like all this other stuff. So that year and a day on that, after 365, on 366, then they decide, and you decide, do you want to be a part of a coven? But that 365 is basically them giving you the structure of the religion. And like I said, there's books out there. You don't have to join a coven to get that information. Lots of people put it out there freely.
Well, and what they do over that course of that year is they piecemeal information to you. So you get a little bit at a time. And you're not allowed to know, you know, like all the secrets all at once. So it's this big secrecy stuff. And it's like, you know, no talking to other people. No, don't talk to anybody about it.
So that was the coven that I met. We tried to connect with one of the girls in the circle when after the whole, I don't know if it was a spell or ritual. I don't know what we did. It was, this sounds so bad. It was hokey at best. But then we wanted to connect with them. We were like, oh, okay. So like, tell us about you guys and the coven. And this girl's like, I'm not allowed to talk to you. It's like, what? She's like, no, we're not allowed to talk to people. Nope, I can't tell you about what's going on here. And we're just like, dang, you had such a good vibe. Like we were watching you the whole time. We thought like we could connect. So she ends up telling my sister, like very quietly, she's like, meet me around the hall. Blah, blah, blah. Like, so they secretly meet outside of the room. And she's like, I would really love to connect with you. I feel your energy too. They have this whole little thing. And she's like, they track our social media. We can't talk to outside people. We can't do this. Like, there's no nothing. I'm like, what the fuck? They're in a cult. That's not.
It sounds like a cult. That's a cult.
What? You can't. They're controlling who you talk to. If you're in a relationship, a religion, a fucking marriage, that's a cult. I don't care. If somebody's trying to control what you do, that's cult. And I can say that because I went through a psychology program and learned.
Okay.
I can verify cult status. All right. So then this is very short because then it's like, there's nothing to that. Choosing your path is about finding what you like. That's ultimately the goal. I don't have to read the last little thing. And then again, watch out for cults or people who want to take your money. Oh, that's another thing. When I first started the New Witches Q&A, which we kind of changed this a bit, I had people come on that said, I have a witch in another state. You know, she wants to charge me $2,000 for 6 weeks of training with her. And I was like, that's outrageous. Please stay away from her. I was like, don't. I'm so sorry.
$1,000. Oh, I've seen the $1,000 things. I'll teach you to be a witch for $1,000. I'm like, what? When we had somebody locally that came up to us that met us at the gym. And so we met her one morning. She's like, I want to learn about, you know, your whatever witch group or
Beliefs,
whatever she
yeah,
said, our
yeah.
beliefs, right? So we met her for breakfast and she's like, so how much does it cost? And we're like, cost?
Nope.
What?
That shouldn't be a thing. It's unfortunate. That's unfortunate.
And she's like, don't you have to pay money? And like, we're like, no,
no.
no.
So that would be the other thing too.
Be aware of that. You
Yes.
shouldn't,
there's schools and training programs. You guys know we're putting together a school for this. That would be something different. You're getting education materials and things. You're paying for something.
yeah.
So that's,
There are
yeah.
witches out there. There's Mia Magic, and you know,
There's witch courses.
witch classes
Yes.
out there that you can pay for that if you want to, but sorry.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. So did we get through choosing your path? If
We did.
Okay.
Because it really just leans into then ethics. So if
Okay.
you're choosing your path and you're looking at these different areas of witchcraft, you're going to know what's right or wrong for you, because when you start reading about practices, that's either going to be like, yes, I shift with that energy, I want to lean into that, or you're going to be repelled and like, that what? No, I don't want to do any of that. No, thank you. Like, it's whatever appeals to your senses and your energy at that time that you can go through. So that's why I say, like, these things all change on what kind of witch you believe you want to be right now versus the witch that you want to be in 2 or 3 years, and how you evolve in that. And before you know it, I promise you'll be like, labels don't matter. I'm just a witch. Like, I just do all the things I want.
Yeah.
And that's
So
what
I'm
makes me
newer,
witch.
like a lot of you are. I've only been doing this, like really doing this for almost 4 years.
Look at you.
And you know, I don't know if I had in mind a type of witch or anything like that, but over those 4 years, I've definitely evolved to, I'm just a witch. I try to live a certain way and my whole thing is to put good energy out into the world and to be kind to people, because I think there's a need for that.
Yes.
And we're lacking that in the world. And I just feel like I want to push that energy out there. So where you are today will evolve over the next 4 or 5 years as you dive into this. So,
and that's good. You want that. You want that growth. That means you're growing.
Yeah. Whatever you pick today, even if you decide you're going to be a divination witch, and just work with tarot and runes and other types of divination tools,
develop your psychic abilities,
Yeah.
you know, whatever
you might expand on that later. And then you become more of it becomes looser as far as what the type that you are.
So this is where you ask yourself the hard questions of like what you truly believe in without anybody else giving you the information of what is right and true. You know, unfortunately, we grew up in a Christian nation. That's not unfortunate. That could be a beautiful thing. What's unfortunate is we're exposed to other people's beliefs when we're born into families. And so usually what our parents believe, we carry that with us in some way, shape, or form, or we completely reject it because it's bullshit and dogmatic. But you can now start exploring what you truly believe. Like, does your spirit live on forever? What is your essence? What are you made of? Do you believe that you have a vibration that sings with the universe? Karma is a big one. Some witches believe that we have multiple lives, and others are like, nope, we're here as an energy just one time and that's it. So I would tell you to look at all of the things that are really common for afterlife processes. What do you think happens after life? What do you think happened before you got here? Do you believe in soul contracts? As you explore the realm of crossing over through either books or documentaries, start asking yourself, what do you believe is real for you? Can you talk to the other side? Once you make up your mind that you're able to talk to the other side, more messages will start flooding into your life, because they're like, your whole team of likes, like, she turned on the on button, everybody show up now, she's ready, like, this is what's happening. So as you affirm your beliefs, the universe starts showing up more for you. And when I say universe, I literally mean like the energy of everything. So that's all souls, spirit guides, whatever's happening. They want to help you live your best life here. Like whatever it was that you needed to come here to learn in a classroom, obviously our belief, that's what they're trying to help you get to. So
and I think I want to just stop there for 1 second, because I don't know how many people on this Zoom call right now have some kind of a history of you were raised a certain religion, or your mother took you, like I was raised Catholic, but I know people who were raised whatever religion. So when you come to this space and time, this place and time rather, and you have that background of belief of what the religion taught you, is we have so just for me as a Catholic, it was go to church, confess your sins, and when you die, you're going to go before God, and he's going to sit in his chair, and he's going to judge you for all the things that you did wrong in your life, and you're going to pay. You're going one way or the other. You're going to heaven or hell, depending on how you lived, and blah, 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 blah. This is shit that I believed, you guys. This is what I was taught. This is what I believed, and I rejected that. And I rejected that for my children as well, because by the time I got to my brother died when my older brother died when I was 19. And that was the last time that I was in a Catholic church. And I just really, I had tried on different religions throughout my teens. And the thing that they all had in common that I experienced anyway, was this living in fear, that if we don't do certain things while we're here, then we need to be afraid of what's going to happen in the afterlife. So if you're here on a witch path, what are you bringing with you? Or the question to explore on your own time, and when you're ready, anytime, whenever you're ready, is of those beliefs that you grew up with, because those are ingrained with you. You prayed it, you said grace at dinner, and you went to church every Sunday or whatever you did. What parts of those things do you want to decide to let go of? And I feel like letting go of the fear part of it, because it's so instilled in us. Do you know how many times I read the book of Revelations and I was scared shitless? I was obsessed reading it over and over again, and just convinced that I knew how the end of the world was going to come, because it describes it in there. If you've ever read it, it's a horrible story. And so I came to this place where I decided to reject all of that. I'm not going to believe that God is this vengeful God. So I guess my point in saying this is, my point of this is like, what beliefs do you have that you're bringing with you, and what do you want to hold on to? What do you want to continue to believe in? Or do you want to open your mind to another way of thinking, which I believe now is that I've been here before in many other lives, and I'm going to be here again. I'm energy. I'm not afraid of dying, because I know that this is just a vessel for my earthly being here. And when I leave, my spirit's going to live on, and it's going to be right here with my kids, and they're going to know that I'm around, and I'm going to be able to communicate with them. And so, and that, to me, that's like, it's so freeing compared to what I grew up with. Damnation. And with the whole damnation thing. So I hope I hope that made sense. I don't know.
It
if
did. It
did.
was part of your
I
story.
see some people, I
Yeah.
see, some people shaking their head. They
Yeah, and
understand.
thank you for sharing that.
So I think that's the part about deciding on this path, like, what are you going to bring with you? If anything, if you didn't, maybe my children did not grow up with religion because I decided no.
Choice.
No.
So when I was younger,
I used to worry that, before I became a witch, I used to worry that I did the wrong thing, that I didn't give them, like, because I'm still like that shit. It gets ingrained with you if you go to church every Sunday when you're a little kid, and your parents, and they're always talking about it, it's like, Jesus. So I used to worry that I did a bad thing with them, but I don't think I did, because what
We're
I
all
actually
witches.
did was I left them free to explore
To choose.
what they wanted to believe in,
Yeah.
and what path they wanted to take. So,
And me, I went to a lot of different churches seeking answers. And every time I would talk with people, because they all just really wanted me to become like part of their church. That was their whole goal, like get another member. But I was like, yeah, I just really want answers first, though. So I had many little sit downs with people. And they would get to a point where they couldn't answer something. I'm like, yeah, you don't know any more than I do. Like, I can find all the things out that you just answered. You have no better insight than I have. And I was like 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. I stopped at about 15 because I almost beat up a girl at church. So she tried talking shit about
chip off the old block here.
Listen, my mom was a single mom with 3 kids, and we had to live in a rough area, but I was grateful that we didn't live under a bridge. And when some snooty little person at church tried to say something, so I got kicked off the church bus and I walked home from there. So that's my story with it. But what it comes down to is just like, what is really benefiting you? And religion can benefit a lot of people and make their lives wonderful. And I love that for them, that they can find it there. But for us, we needed the freedom to choose and make our own path. And witchcraft is really it.
And I'm sorry, may I
definitely.
again? Okay. And I think that if your religion and like you believe in praying, I don't think there's anything wrong with praying. But much of the things that we do
It's
when
exactly
we're
praying.
manifesting, when we're talking to us, we're praying.
Yeah,
we're talking
agreed.
to
I
we're
think that's
talking
the
to a
same
spirit.
energy.
So, you don't have to throw away everything.
Mhm.
You just, I think for me, it's freeing yourself of the fear. So I see somebody said something about the Baptist church was like a cult, their beliefs were cult-like. And
Yeah.
I see that because
Cult
it's cult shit, exactly. And I just choose, I want to choose for my own life to not live in fear and to believe. And I do, and I, it's not that I want to believe, it's that I do believe. And I've got books that back it up, that say that we've been here before.
Yeah.
That reincarnation. There's all
kinds.
kinds of documentation, and you can research that if you have any doubts that you've been here, that we've all been here before. If you have any doubts about that, is it something with the masters? I'll write it. I'll do some book recommendations for
We'll
sort
bring
of
it up on the Q&A on Thursday.
on the Q&A. Yeah, a couple of
Right.
books that talk about that. It's messages. I think it's Messages from the Masters.
That sounds right.
And this is this book was written by a brain doctor. So, and he didn't believe anything in the spiritual realm until
He was scientific.
He was super scientific. And then he had an experience with a patient who, as he did some regression therapy with her, she started, telling stories about remembering things from living like on the prairie somewhere, and even further. She had 86 different lives or some fascinating stuff. So you can find texts out there about past lives, and it's not BS, in case you're wondering, or in case you want like verification, validation, or whatever.
It's the research that you do. You know what witchcraft leads you to? It leads you to research as many things as you possibly can to find your own truth. Like, that is the journey of witchcraft. You are going to research a lot of things, because once you learn it, you grow from that, right? It's undeniable. You can't change knowing something. The problem with great knowledge is the power and responsibility that you have to then live authentically. You don't get to say, I didn't know that. So once you do the work and you learn things.
That's it, Brian Weiss. That's it, Reba. You got it.
Thank you, Reba.
Messages from the masters.
We
That's
just-
such a good, oh my gosh.
We just have like 4 journaling prompts for you guys, and then we're going to open up the floor for Q&A. So one of them is, do you believe in karma? Because that's obviously past lives, that's cycling through things. Do you believe that the universe is also always creating a balance? And what does karma mean to you? Can you affect karma? Do you create your own karma? Are you living out karma? Like, do you ever feel like so many bad things happen to you? And you're like, what did I do to deserve this? Because you're looking for that balance of what is it that is happening, and how do I get back to not, like the highs and the lows? How do I just level that out and just be like consistent all the time? Do you believe it's okay to use magic to change other people's will? This is a big, big conversation in witchcraft. Many witches believe it's okay, and many witches believe it's not. And then you have to ask yourself, what spells really change other people's will? If you do a prosperity spell for a raise at work, do you believe that you're taking money from somebody else who might need it more? Like, you have to start digging deeper into those questions of, where does the power in that lie? If you take something out of the universe, does it create an imbalance in another place when you do a spell? So that's thinking about changing other people's will when you do spells and magic. Do you think it's acceptable to practice black magic, or magic that is meant to harm somebody in some way, make them sick, make them have a car accident, make them go to jail? That's all I can think of right now.
Make them lose their car and have to ride a bike.
Bringing up shit from Thursdays. And we didn't do that, but
We didn't do that, but
we just asked karma to happen faster. So with black magic, and then what is black magic to you? Is there a such thing as black magic? I mean, there doesn't even have to be that. I don't ever use that term, just so you guys know. Like, that seems like an antiquated term to me. Like, that's a 90s term, like, ooh, black magic and goth people and whatever. Like, no, it's all just a vibe now. But the magic that would be purposely to hurt somebody, whatever you might want to call that. And then if you don't believe that it should be used, is there ever an acceptable situation where you're like, I would then absolutely do a spell to make that person die, expire, get in a car accident? Like, what?
if somebody
what's the level?
murdered your kid.
Somebody murdered your child, and you're a witch. What are you doing with that? Are you forgiving them instantly and saying, like, that's okay, my child's not really gone? Or are you like, I'm double, like, it's all coming out, chicken heads and whatever? Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
that went in a whole other direction.
Well, it's the energy that you would devote to the revenge, that you would try to seek in that situation, which I can totally understand that human feeling of. I think Jamie's told the story before, but her husband's daughter was murdered, and that, when you have a child that's murdered, I can't even imagine. I mean, I watched what he's gone through, but I can't be inside of him to feel it, but.
You don't know unless you've
been there. So what, as a witch, what would you do with something that intense? Because you may be faced with it. And then at some point you will come into your own power, and you're going to have, you're going to want, when bad things happen to you, you're going to need to focus your energy in a certain direction. And what is that direction going to be? Is it going to be, I'm going to get this motherfucker back? Or is it going to be, okay, I'm going to take the higher path and I'm going to choose forgiveness? And I'm going to see what is it that I can learn from this? What can I do with this that's positive? It's hard. This is not easy, you guys, but it's something that unfortunately I hope we're not faced with, but some of us here will be.
When we lose people from other people's
actions,
we make a very quick decision on where our energy is going to focus. Is it going to focus on the negativity and hatred towards that person and taking our person from us? Or are we going to focus on possibly connecting with that person on the other side and going like, oh my gosh, I wish you were still here, but I know you're not gone. And that has been my goal and my job almost in my relationship with my husband, to make sure that he knows his daughter is not gone. She's on the other side. I feel her all the time. Like, we would have been best friends had we had a chance to meet, but it never played into it. And we were together 6 years. And every time we went up to take a trip, I just didn't go. I was like, no, you guys go, have fun. Like, another time. And I missed that opportunity. But now she has 5 children and I'm extremely close with them. Well, 4 of them. So it's then where you focus your energy afterwards. And that was the turning point. I didn't want him to just focus on hating that guy, because obviously there's that. But I wanted him to focus on, let's look at her children. Let's give them every experience that you wish you could have done with her, or whatever's happening. So where you focus your energy after a traumatic event is huge in the path and how you heal yourself, the direction that you take yourself, whether or not I don't want to say you get past it, because you don't get past losing people you love. It just becomes easier to accept that you can't call them, see pictures of them, watch them grow. Like, that time just makes that a little easier of like, oh yeah, I don't pick up the phone and be like, I'm going to call. No, I'm not. They're not there. They're gone. That actually is what you get used to, not the fact that like, oh, I'm totally over it that my person died. No, that doesn't happen. We're
human. That's not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, we are connected to these souls energetically anyway. So you feel that loss, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, that they're not right there. It was so easy when they were physical. Now you have to try harder. Now you have to focus your energy. And when you call on them and ask them to come to your dreams, be with you through an experience, whatever it is, you're watching a beautiful sunset and you're like, I know you're here with me right now. I feel this beautiful moment that we're sharing, even though I'm physical and you're ethereal. That's energy. You're a pure energy, just being here with it.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the last things that we get, and I want you guys to ask yourselves about this early on, because it comes up a lot, is love spells. So this is on the lighter side of things, love spells and being for yourself, being for other people, keeping relationships together. Just how do you feel about it? Because a lot of love spells people feel like are manipulating other people. So that just goes into the whole thing. Do you do spells that try to change other people's will? Or are you more focused on changing yourself and then living your best life? So it's all about
letting the universe bring whatever, bringing that to you and
Yeah.
sending you signs that you're on the right path.
Thank you so much for joining us for week 2 of the Beginner Witch series, where we talked about types of witches, witch ethics, and we gave you some great journaling prompts to start you on your Grimoire or Book of Shadows journey. We will see you next week with, I think it's the Witch's Box. I don't know. We'll be
Week
here.
3.
Yes. And if you want to join us for Thursday at 7 p.m. live on YouTube, we'll be answering questions and going over the questions for this Q&A that you're not going to see right now because we're going to turn off the camera. All right. See you guys next week.
Bye.